Hey guys, so I have been having kind of a bizarre reading January, right? I read two books earlier this year. Both were from authors that I liked. One was another book in a series that I really enjoyed. And the first one, not good. The second one, better, but not as good as the first book in that series. And so then we roll up to this book. This book that I am reviewing today is the author's third book. I had never read anything by them before, and I didn't super love the premise because I was a little worried. And I just have to take it all back because I had low expectations for this, and there was an extremely high reward of reading this book. So the book that I am reviewing today is called Our Ex's Wedding by Taleen Voshkuni. I hope that I'm saying that correctly. Taleen is an Armenian-American author, and this book is heavily infused with Armenian-American culture, which is not something that I'm very familiar with. I'm just gonna say up top, it's infused throughout the book, different kind of like experiences with the diaspora, and it was really cool to learn about that through this book. So as the title suggests, the part of the kind of like streak of this book that I wasn't sure I was going to really enjoy was the fact that it's our ex's wedding. This is the story of Ani and Rafi. I'm going to get into a little bit more of their character arc, but the thing that the title kind of leads into is the fact that Ani is a wedding planner and Rafi owns a winery, and their mutual ex chooses to get married. Her name is Kami, get married at the winery that Rafi owns, and asks Ani to plan the wedding. Rafi dated Kami back when they were both in high school, so it's been about 10 years for them. They were the first people that, they kind of each said, "I love you" to, but they broke up, and then a week later, Rafi's brother died very unexpectedly, and Kami had a really lukewarm reaction to that. Rafi, even though they'd broken up, thought that she, would be a little bit more emotionally involved in that because she obviously knew his brother, and she wasn't. So Rafi's kind of held like a little bit of a grudge against her. Not really a grudge, but like he's just kind of wrote her off at that moment. Ani and Kami broke up about 2-ish years ago, and Ani is bi, and so she has dated different, men and women over the course of her life, but she really thought Kami was the one. They were together for a while, and then Kami broke it off, and Ani was just heartbroken. She's been struggling to get over it. She hasn't really dated anybody since, and she does initially pick up this wedding not knowing that Kami is one of the brides. She only ever corresponds with Ani's fiance Grace. This is a queer wedding. And so, she's just like, sure, I'll do this, and is kind of rudely surprised when Kami shows up at the viewing of the winery. Complicating factors of this book continue. At the beginning of the book, we learn that Ani was recently scammed by a couple for whom she did a giant wedding for, and she is heavily in debt, almost $100,000 in debt, and then more keeps piling up because she is taking out credit card loans to try to keep paying her one staff member who she really cares about. And so even though this wedding is incredibly awkward, she feels like she has to commit to it because both Kami and Grace are very rich, like billionaire rich, and so they have the money, they have the budget, they're going to pay her an insane amount of money, which is going to help her to get out of debt. She has also been warned off by multiple people in her life of Rafi. Rafi has a history of being a playboy who really treats women kind of poorly. Not anything violent or anything, but just like he's the kind of guy who just hits on women like all the time. He sleeps with them once, never calls them again, like that type of a thing. But it does turn out that all of her information is about 5 years old. In those interim 5 years, Rafi does come from a wealthy family. He was on track to become a doctor, ended up dropping out of that career path, got his MBA. While he is at this MBA program, he accidentally joins a feminist book club and just kind of sticks with it because he likes learning, and as he starts to realize that he has been treating women very poorly, he's been kind of on his like feminist journey, as well as both being Armenian American, there are certain ideas about gender and sexuality that he's kind of grown up with that he's now actively trying to combat in his own life. For Ani, obviously she has been bi for a while, and so even though she also exists in a community that doesn't really honor her queerness, she's kind of grown up in that, whereas for Rafi, he's been like trying to kind of shake off that. And even though his dad, who is on the property, is very traditional, very patriarchal, is very upset that Rafi wants to host the first wedding ever at this winery is going to be a queer Armenian American wedding. Rafi is just totally on board, because the winery is also in the red, and he needs this to kind of, make the business on track as well. A lot of awkward things happen in their first meeting. So obviously, Ani knows that Rafi owns the winery, but like I said, she has this vision of him as like a playboy who's like terrible to women, and she gets there first and meets him before the soon-to-be married couple arrives, bringing all their baggage, and they have a meat disaster. Ami kind of literally like falls into him and trips. They have like some biting words. They don't kind of really realize where the other person is coming from. And so like she doesn't realize that the shirt that she spilled her matcha all over is one of the last things that he has from his dead brother, and that's why he kind of reacts kind of rudely. He realizes that he's been rude and tries to apologize, but then she thinks that like he's hitting on her because that's like his only way of reacting with women. So it's just terrible. And then Kami and Grace show up, and then everybody realizes that they're like everyone in the room has dated Kami, and it's just it's awkward. It's awkward and terrible, but like I said, Ani and Rafi both are like, well, we have to commit to this for various reasons. This book is absolutely a slow burn, which was A, amazing, B, necessary, because like I said, there is kind of like a layer of trust that Rafi needs to build up. He knows that he's changed, but he also knows that he has been terrible to women in the past, and that the Armenian American community that they both exist in this part of like Napa/San Francisco, California, is pretty small. And so he learns, for example, that Ani knows people who he's like slept with and then ghosted, and she is dealing with these unresolved feelings for Kami, but also maybe starting to see the light in their relationship, i.e. taking the rose-colored glasses off and kind of rethinking some of the things that she was maybe romanticizing a little bit. So there's a great self-realization track there, as well as giving Rafi the space to show her who he is rather than be told by other people who he was, and applying that to him now. They spend some really cute moments together, planning the wedding, trying to get this. Kami and Grace basically asked them to completely redo the landscaping in the back of the winery, and learning about the different insecurities that each other have and being vulnerable. Like I said, Rafi lost his brother, and that completely exploded his entire family. Ani is supposed to be the older sister. She has one younger sister, but this sister is an extremely successful lawyer. She's already married to a very successful Armenian American man. And so, she just feels like she is the failure of her family, and that she's kind of treated that way, which is why she hasn't told anybody that she's in this debt, even though she knows a number of people who could help her get out of it, because she feels like she has to do this on her own. What I loved about the slow burn here is there is a very clear building of their relationship. And I don't just mean their relationship as in they both think the other person is hot, which is very clearly there, but just a real and true building of trust and, like I said, vulnerability and safety with each other, which by the time that they get together, you're like, yes, kiss, I've been waiting. Which it's sometimes in these relationships, if they don't take the time to build up that like foundation, there are some romance novels where I'm just like, please don't kiss. Please don't kiss, this is bad. Like I said, I loved the underlying themes about being Armenian American, the diaspora, their different family relationships, what it means to be queer within this structure of their cultural like family backgrounds and stuff. And also just like living your dreams and what it means to be true to yourself. And you know, I just really loved this book. There's so much in it. I am just so thrilled by the layers and the levels to this. And I'm so surprised that it ended up being the kind of book that it is rather than the book that I feared that it was. So what I mean when I say the kind of book that I thought it was because it was our ex's wedding. I really thought there was going to be some weird love, not a triangle really, but like nexus maybe, where like as they're falling in love, they have unresolved feelings for, you know, Kami, and then Grace is involved. And I was just really, really worried that we were going to get something that I never really thought anybody would be cheating necessarily, but I was really, really concerned we were going to get something like a cheating adjacent or something that felt super uncomfy. And you know right out the gate that Rafi is just like has no more feelings for Kami, which I loved. And then you really do get the sense of like Ani's journey being more of like, I have to see the reality of what this was rather than the fantasy that I'm still attached to. And that felt very powerful and very real, as well as never demonizing either Kami or Grace, even though Kami is definitely a complicated person, but just kind of like allowing them all to be real people with flaws. And, you know, talking about, you know, finding, you know, not the perfect person for you, but the right person for you. And it was just so good. I really had my doubts that was going to happen. I was afraid, but it really is how that comes out. And then in the ending, there is some miscommunication in this book, but there wasn't like that really, really fierce and ridiculous, you know, third act breakup situation. I felt like the ending of this book, yes, are there some ridiculous things that happen? Yeah, but I really did. It's a romance novel, we know. But I really felt that the way that it took the required beats of a romance novel in that sense made a lot of sense for the characters, or more sense than I usually get out of a romance novel where they're saying you have to break up in this spot. So again, that just makes my heart sing, because I loved the feeling that I was reading a book that was natural for the characters rather than a book that was forcing itself to hit the romance plot points. So this book is an arc, but it is being released tomorrow. So if you're seeing this the day that the review is posted, then it is not out quite yet, but it will be out, like I said, tomorrow. So thank you to Edelweiss and the publisher for my advanced review copy, but it is very soon to be available to you through your local bookstore, your local library, however it is that you get your books. Like I said, I don't think it's like a 5-star for me. Like I wouldn't say that it's the perfect book, but it is one of the best books that I've read in a really long time, because it attended to all those levels of like, you know, the diversity, the representation, the gentle, caring, and thoughtful development of not just the romance, but each character's individual personal journey, and making them kind of match together, making that even and feel natural as the story progressed. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And now that I know that this is Taleen's third book, I definitely want to go back and read the others, and I will certainly look forward to anything that she publishes in the future. So I am so glad that I finally have like a really good book to tell you guys about in January, because it's been grim. It's been a little grim. So here's hoping that this is just another step in an upward trajectory, but hopefully I will be back on time again next week to tell you how we fared. Thanks, guys. Bye.